Today, we expect him to be released later today, potentially, and we'll get into all that. Dan Orlovsky, Jeremy Fowler here with us, Louis Riddick as well, and Adam Schefter, of course, who's been incredibly busy all week. Adam, let's start with the number one free agent on our board, Trey Hendrickson, the news that happened today.
He's got a 4-year deal worth up to $120 million with the Baltimore Ravens, who obviously, in the words of the Raiders, backed out of the deal, the trade that they had with the Las Vegas Raiders. So now Trey Hendrickson stays in the AFC North, where he'll be going up against his former quarterback teammate in Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, twice a year as the Ravens look to build up their pass rush and hope that they get that from Trey Hendrickson at this point in time on that 4-year deal worth up to $120 million. And that came after they backed out of the deal with Maxx Crosby. Maxx Crosby and his wife flew to Baltimore, were there Tuesday, and they went through a situation where the Ravens had him go through a physical, and they just didn't feel comfortable in the end, seeking a variety of opinions. Now, a lot of people criticizing the Ravens, maybe that's fair, but the Ravens had access to the medical reports, and we know that Maxx Crosby's doctor, Neil Elitrosh, said that he had surgery 2 months ago, was on crutches for 7 weeks, was off crutches for just the last week, and the ideal time to take a physical would have been a little bit further down the line, not this week. Baltimore wasn't comfortable in lieu of the price and ultimately decided that it would not go through with the deal with the Las Vegas Raiders, which means that Crosby goes back to Las Vegas. He's in their building today. Nobody knows exactly what will happen to him just yet, but this is a setback for the Raiders franchise.
There's so many different angles to all of this, but Adam, you laid out a few things that I want to spend a little bit more time on. You talked about maybe even a week from now that Maxx Crosby could pass the physical that the Ravens did, definitely could pass other teams' physicals. Just some of this has to do with the timing of it based off of when the surgery was done. For clarification here, these players go to these new teams and they are then evaluated by those teams' doctors. So the Ravens doctors, very well-respected group, they're going to be doing these evaluations, doing their own imaging. What can you explain about Crosby's ability to pass a different team's physical going forward?
Well, I think there are teams that always can find a way to pass a player on a physical. It's all in the taste of the buyer. But in this particular case, with all that the Ravens were giving up, they were not comfortable with what the doctors said to them and with what the medical reports showed. Now, Maxx Crosby was in a situation where he battled through this knee injury all year long. Could have had surgery earlier in the year, opted to push it off until December, and that was a setback to his knee. And I think the Ravens doctors were a little bit concerned about that. Now, again, Neil Elitrosh says that Maxx Crosby is exactly where he should be, and they do expect that he should be ready for the start of the regular season, bringing him along slowly. It's a massive recovery that he's going through. But at this point in time, between the questions that they had about the meniscus, the bone, the cartilage, the Ravens did not feel comfortable moving forward when the price was as steep as it was.
Yeah, when you're talking about a couple first-round picks, it is. It's a massively steep price. And with all these things that have happened now, even if Maxx Crosby is on track and we expect him to be ready to play at the beginning of the season, how does this impact the price for Crosby if another trade partner comes into the picture here?
Well, again, Maxx Crosby back in the Raiders building today, and the Raiders already have gotten several calls from teams expressing an interest and a curiosity about acquiring Maxx Crosby in a trade, which doesn't mean they will. I think the Raiders are right back to where they were all along. They were open to listening, but wouldn't deal him unless they got the price that they were asking for, which the Baltimore Ravens ultimately agreed to give them before they decided not to. And so if there's a team that steps up and gives them the price they're seeking, yes, the Raiders probably would be open. But what is the price right now when Maxx Crosby is not fully healthy, when there are questions about that knee? The doctors say he's on track, he should be back, but there are a variety of opinions here about how that will now proceed. And so there's a path in which Maxx Crosby could be with the Raiders, and there's a path that we could see a trade, though we'd have no idea when that trade would be and what the compensation would be for, Laura.
Yeah, we'll continue to keep our eye on any news that develops with all of this. Thanks for all those details, Adam. Dan, if you're the Raiders right now, even if you're Maxx Crosby, but specifically the Raiders, I mean, Yeah, right. What a wild 24 hours or even more than that. What do you think they should do now?
I think the Raiders just have to take what they can get right now.
Yeah.
I think it's this situation where, am I willing to take 60 cents on the dollar? Because we can live in the world where, okay, you're a Raider now, but what happens if the physical isn't what other teams want it to be a month from now, 2 months from now? What happens if he plays in September? Do you think the value is going to go up in comparison to what it is right now? And so I think if you're the Raiders, you got to sit there and say, we are where we are. And if a team is willing to give us 60 or 70 cents on the dollar in comparison to what we had from Baltimore, I think that's got to be something. Because you can live in the world where, no, his value will get back to where it was. No, it won't. His value could also drop a lot. His value could decrease a lot over the next 5 or 6, 7 months. And so I don't envy the situation that John Spytek, their general manager, is in, but I think you got to be willing to hear what other teams are willing to part with.
Where are we with the money, the financial situation of all this for the Raiders? Because some have wondered, well, shoot, they spent all this money in free agency, over $200 million. How are they even affording to keep Maxx Crosby? What does that picture look like?
Yeah, so, Laura, luckily they had a ton of cap space, nearly $100 million going into this situation. So they spent a lot, nearly $300 million in contracts. But I'm told that they should be good there, that they can fit everybody under the cap and still bring Crosby back. The new league year starts in less than an hour. They should be compliant. So to your timeline, it's interesting because I don't think they can get 70 cents on the dollar right now. It might be 40 because teams are going to try to get as low as possible. I've talked to a few teams to see what they think is the best course of action. They feel like, hey, you can try to trade him now for whatever best offer you can get. You can maybe wait closer to the draft when teams get desperate. Or even take it to the season. Maybe he plays and plays well and looks like the knee is no issue. You get closer to the trade deadline, maybe you can get more capital that way. So it's really 3 timelines they're working on.
Lewis, you think 40 cents on the dollar for a player like Maxx Crosby, if he is as healthy as we expect he will be based on some of the smartest medical minds, in the world here, is that decent enough from the Raiders standpoint?
I think it all depends on what the Raiders feel as though his future availability is going to be. And they have more information than anyone because they're the ones who have seen him get injured in the past, understand what his track record is, what he rehabs like, and really what the reasonable projection is as far as when he's going to be available again. So if you see the Raiders bring their price down, then there's 2 things at play. One, they may be concerned about, not just will Maxx come back. Obviously, he's going to come back. This is an injury that he can come back from. But then how much longer is he going to be able to play on this knee? And I have no idea what the condition of the knee was. But obviously, it was such that Baltimore wasn't comfortable with it. And then number 2, you got to look at it this way. John Spytek was figuring, that he was going to have 2 number 1s to really build out this football team into the future and really execute a hard reset. Does he still want that reset in some way, shape, or form? Does he still want some kind of, draft capital at his disposal that's going to come from Maxx Crosby? So I think we'll learn a lot about what they think about Maxx and how this has altered their build-out for the presumed number 1 overall pick, Fernando Mendoza, here, I think, pretty soon.
Yeah, I think the 2 most important things now moving forward for the Raiders in this situation is, what do the Raiders feel comfortable that is going to be worthy for them to part with Maxx Crosby for? And then what are other teams comfortable giving up, even if they say, yeah, the physical is not ideal, but we believe the long term is going to be okay? I think because Shefty keeps saying the Ravens got to a point where the compensation was too high given the physical. Did they talk about maybe giving up 2 second-rounders or conditional? I think that's really the 2 sticking points in the situation now.
Yeah, and again, that physical will look different in time, right? So if this does stretch out a little bit toward the draft, like what Jeremy's saying, he could look a lot better at that point or a lot more comfortable for another partner. I think we have to go, Lou, but we're coming right back to it, okay? Hey, the Ravens don't have Crosby, but they do have Hendrickson. So let's compare the 2 players, right? Crosby is an every-down player. I mean, there's no doubt his commitment to being the best on the field when he's out there, logging nearly 900 more snaps than Hendrickson in the last 3 seasons and has been much better against the run. But Hendrickson has 7 more sacks in that time, so it might not be as much of a difference than you think. Dan, are the Ravens actually better off in some ways? I don't want to act like sour grapes here, but is this a situation where Hendrickson can really do a lot more of the production than people are giving him credit for?
They landed in a good place.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say better off because I think Maxx Crosby is one of the 5 most destructive defenders in football. We also don't know if they keep those picks in the first round, who Baltimore selects, what those players become. Because I think everyone would tell you, Maxx Crosby, better player than Trey Hendrickson. But Trey Hendrickson's still a very good player. So I think that Baltimore certainly landed in a good spot where they have a very good pass rusher and more cap space and those picks. So you'll have to see kind of what those picks become if they do anything with it. But if I was Baltimore and I was okay moving off from those picks 2 days ago, I think I would be willing to move off one of those picks for a player like A.J. Brown. I've said that. If I was Baltimore and I have A.J. Brown and Trey Hendrickson, then I feel like I'm in a better place.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good, Lewis. I mean, you think about what Hendrickson brings to the table. Do you feel like Baltimore should kind of still feel like they came out in a good spot here?
Yeah, I think they feel fine with it. Obviously, I mean, look, Trey Hendrickson is no slouch. I mean, I think we understand just how good he is, especially in big moments when it comes to rushing the passer. The guy has got an absolutely top-notch pass rush package. But what you are giving up, and there's no doubt about this, the stats bear it out, and when you watch the tape, it bears it out as well. On first and second down, Maxx Crosby is one of one. He is a different type of dude, and Trey Hendrickson just doesn't play that way. He just doesn't. He doesn't play with that kind of ferocity. He doesn't play with that kind of explosiveness at the point of attack. He's not going to create the game-changing TFLs, the game-changing pressures, harassing quarterbacks, getting inside the head of opposing offenses the same way that Maxx does. Those are all the kind of things that you're paying a premium for when you get Maxx Crosby. But I think the thing that Eric DeCosta and the brass down there in Baltimore are probably happy about, obviously, is still having those two number ones. And they'll look at it like this. Look, we'll find a way to set the edge against the run. We'll find a way to create TFLs against the run. We'll run enough 8-man boxes if we have to. That's what Jesse Minter does. Jesse Minter is one of the very best schemers in the NFL. Okay? Anthony Weaver is one of the very best schemers in the NFL. The defensive coordinator who's going to work alongside Jesse Minter. I think they're fine with what Trey doesn't do in the run game, but they darn sure like what he does when it comes third down and it's time to put a quarterback on his back. So, yeah, I think they feel pretty good.
So it's interesting. Just now, the Ravens made another signing. It's business as usual for Baltimore. So
Right.
They signed Trey Hendrickson this morning. They just signed safety Jalen Hawkins, who's an impact player for New England. So Kevin Byard goes to New England in his old spot. Jalen Hawkins goes to Baltimore for 2 years, $10 million. So, look, Baltimore is getting to work here, and Trey Hendrickson, he didn't have the market that he probably hoped. He wanted to be over that $30 million threshold, well over. He didn't get it, but there were 6 or 7 teams circling. And I was told the Ravens were looking into this even Monday and Tuesday. They did flirt with the possibility of Trey Hendrickson and Maxx Crosby together. Ultimately, that did not work out.
Man, that would have been interesting, right? You wonder if Trey Hendrickson thought that was happening too. Okay, some news just minutes ago from NFL Network's Tom Pelissero. A 3-time Pro Bowl safety Kevin Byard that Jeremy just talked about signing with the Patriots, a 1-year deal, $9 million. And from Adam, Aaron Jones restructuring his deal. Also, you see this, Okonkwo is going to the Commanders. So that was one, Dan, that you were actually interested in. You've mentioned Chig Okonkwo a few times.
Yeah, I like Chig. He's a pass-catching tight end. Obviously, Washington needs to add to pass-catching threats, and I like this addition. Multiple tight ends are going to be used. New offensive coordinator David Blau in Washington comes from Detroit, where they use a ton of tight ends. I like this addition as a pass-catching threat for that young offense.
All right, so Adam, amazing job this week. He always does so incredibly well, breaking all this news. Adam, everybody appreciates it, I think, but just another shout-out to you for doing so
Good job,
much,
Jeff.
doing it at such a high
Great
level.
team. Great.
You're awesome.
By the way, Dan last night was carrying my bags on the plane on the flight back from Indy because we're dealing with Maxx Crosby. He was an excellent bellhop. He did a great job. Great teammate there. Really appreciate it, Dan.
Be a great teammate.
I'm glad you had him doing something.
Yeah,
I mean,
more you can
I'm
do.
seeing him. He's over there taking pictures of you, Adam. You're in this like stressful situation with the Maxx Crosby news.
I didn't even know that.
Dan's capitalizing on it. Yeah.
Kind of what I did as a player, Shefty.
Oh.
Carry bags, tell everybody good job.
Back of the end zone. Sorry. All right. It's been a while. I'm sorry, Dan. I was not going to say it. There was a beat. I wasn't going to do it.
This company doesn't miss
And then
a day,
here's
man.
the reality, though, Dan. The temptation was too great. I couldn't resist.
Fight it.
All right. Here's what happens here on the free agent board. The quarterbacks that we're still waiting to find out where they're going to go. Kyler Murray, look for some potential action with him today. Aaron Rodgers, Kirk Cousins. Other people have found new homes. Malik Willis, Tua Tagovailoa. We'll talk about those in just a bit. But, Adam, let's start with Kyler Murray and what we expect to happen potentially as the new league year begins.
Well, we expect that he'll be released here at the start of the new league year, which starts here in just under an hour. And it's a situation where he then will become a free agent. Most people believe the Vikings are going to be very interested, and Kyler Murray also be interested in the Vikings. We'll see how that works out. But Kyler Murray is expected to be set free this afternoon later on. Aaron Rodgers, still a free agent right now, waiting to commit to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers have wanted him back. He's been non-committal so far. The Pittsburgh Steelers are waiting for an answer to that question right now. He has not given one. The hope is he'll be back with Mike McCarthy, and we'll see how that one works out. If not, they have Will Howard in backup. But another option that could be looming out there is Kirk Cousins, who also is expected to be released today from the Atlanta Falcons before the start of the new league year. Situation where he'll be on the street, doesn't have to rush, has made a ton of money during his NFL career, and now we'll see if and when he finds a new home. And a man who got a big new deal today was Daniel Jones from the Indianapolis Colts, a 2-year extension worth $60 million, or $88 million, up to $100 million with incentives. Big deal for Daniel Jones. Look, the Colts' priority was keeping Daniel Jones, keeping Alec Pierce, and before the new league year opened today, both players now are under contract, Jones and Pierce, back to the Colts.
All right, and based on current contracts, Jones' average salary 16th among all quarterbacks, just ahead of Matthew Stafford, Sam Darnold, and Baker Mayfield. These contract rankings likely to change throughout the offseason, but that's where Jones is right now.
Those guys are underpaid.
Yeah, I'm seeing some agents out there that are going to be like, well, wait a second, what are we doing here? Okay. Daniel Jones joined the Pat McAfee Show earlier today to talk about working his way back from the Achilles tear that he suffered in December.
We'll keep checking the boxes, working with the guys here with the Colts, and feel good about that. So I'm planning on being back, and the goal is shooting for week 1. We got a special thing going, and working with this coaching staff, working with the guys in the locker room, and fired up to get Alec back and all that. So looking forward to it.
Dan, what do you think of the Colts' decision to pay Daniel Jones coming off the Achilles injury?
It's fair. It was really their only choice, to be honest, as well. I think, listen, there's an injury history that's got to give you just some hesitation. It's not the Achilles. Daniel's had the Achilles. He's had the broken leg. He's had the neck. He's had the ACL. But they traded away their first-round pick, so they didn't have any leverage in that regard. And then once you see, like, okay, Kyler seems like he's going to Minnesota. Geno Smith gets traded to the Jets. Tua goes to Atlanta. There wasn't a ton of other options for Indianapolis, and I think it's a fair deal for both sides. If Daniel balls, he's going to get a lot of money next year. If Daniel maybe isn't healthy or struggles a little bit, it doesn't handicap the Colts for their long-term future at the position.
So the Colts wanted to keep Alec Pierce, the wide receiver, Daniel Jones together. That was their goal really for the last month, and those two are incredibly tight, so they wanted to stay together. But now it's going to cost them nearly a third of their salary cap just for those two players, and it probably cost them Trey Hendrickson or some defensive pieces, because now they have a lot of holes there. They've lost players there. Safety Nick Cross just signed with Washington. They have a lot of holes to fill. Now, they draft well, but the Colts have some work to do over the next few days to add pieces. But they got their quarterback. He plans to be back week 1. That's his goal. They've got a look at his recovery the last few months for the Achilles, and they're comfortable with it.
I heard a little groan from Lou. I mean, you heard that there, Jeremy. You had said that earlier, that they were in the mix potentially for Trey Hendrickson, the Colts were, and they end up in this situation where they do tie up the key offensive players that they prioritize. But, Lou, what are your thoughts? And was that a groan? I wasn't sure. Was it a sigh?
No. No, it was almost like a grunt of, like, yeah, I get it. I mean, I get it with the quarterback position in general, simply because, you know, I think we all sometimes look at these players and look at quarterbacks in particular in that position where we're always going, well, what's the next best alternative? How can we get the next guy? How can we get the next guy? How can we get a guy that's just like that will just wow us, like Burrow and Mahomes and Matthew Stafford? But, you know, teams don't really they don't have those options, and I don't, quite honestly, I don't think they really think that way. I think they see what Daniel Jones did while he was healthy. And the kind of relationship he built with Tyler Warren, the kind of relationship he built with Alec Pierce, the kind of running back they have in Jonathan Taylor. And I think they look at that and they combine all that with the kind of rapport that Shane Steichen has built with this offense and with this team overall. And then they got a nice backup in Riley Leonard, who plays well at the end of the year last year. They're trying to trade Anthony, see if he can find a new home. And they're going, you know what, we're not in such a bad spot. I mean, yeah, the money is a little bit higher than what I thought it would be. I didn't think he'd be up there in the $44, $45 million range. But good for Daniel. And I think for the Colts, I understand why they did this. And they have a lot of intel about how his rehab is going. And they obviously are pretty comfortable with it.
Yeah, it's a good deal, like you said, Dan, on both sides potentially here. Now, Jones and Kyler Murray, they were both top 10 picks in 2019, and Kyler's been more productive on the field in his career. I mean, you see this. He ranks 12th in the league in total QBR over that time period since 2019. When you think about him, we're kind of already putting him on this Minnesota team.
He's going to Minnesota, yeah.
Okay, so he's going to be the starting quarterback there, and what does that look like?
Well, I think the interesting thing is after he goes there, what does Kevin O'Connell say about it? That's what I'm most interested in. Does Kevin O'Connell come out, who's the head coach, and say, this is an open competition, or this is Kyler's job?
Well, what would you do?
I think I would sit there and say, Kyler Murray is going to be given every opportunity to be the starting quarterback.
So it is a competition.
And I'm telling J.J. McCarthy, you got to beat him out. Like, you have to go take the job from Kyler Murray. I think that's probably the likeliest way I would go about doing it, and I think it ends up going. I don't think Kyler's going there without some type of, hey, yeah, we think it's going to be you unless he takes it from you.
Yeah. So the messaging from inside the Minnesota building from people I talked to is we have not given up on J.J. McCarthy. In an ideal world, they want this to go like how the Colts situation went last year. You signed Daniel Jones, but you give it a competition in the spring, early in training camp. Anthony Richardson did his best, but he could not beat Daniel Jones. That's probably what they're looking for, but we all know if you're seeing other people, it's probably time to move on, and the other person knows that. And that's kind of what this is.
I mean, Lou. Yeah, go, Lou.
It's over. It's over for JJ. Yeah. They signed him. It's over. Look, okay, so, all right, you bring Kyler Murray in there, right? It's a new system for him. He has to get reps. You have to, actually see him take enough snaps with the starters in order to have enough intel to really figure out whether or not, okay, this is a guy who I think really does level us up at this quarterback position. And given what happened to them before with Sam, if he winds up winning the job and he winds up playing well, they're not going to just let him go then. They're going to wind up saying, look, we need to go ahead and figure this out now for the future, for how we can keep him long term. And now you're going to have a guy in J.J. McCarthy who's going to be running scout team, taking some reps, a guy who already needs to be kind of shown the way by a veteran who can kind of help him become a better pro, become a guy who really drills down on the details, matures from a emotional standpoint. That's not Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray don't care about that. Kyler Murray's not there for that. So for J.J. McCarthy, look, I know you moved up to 10 to pick him. It's going to be time to move on from him. You sign Kyler Murray. I'm telling you, it's over. It's over for J.J. McCarthy, in my opinion. It's over.
So then, I guess, at least 3. You hope for more. The Patriots improved their total by 10 last year. And the Raiders currently this year's top spender with over $200 million in guaranteed money. Vegas had all that cap space because they had agreed to the trade, Maxx Crosby sending him to the Ravens back on March 6th. So the Raiders signed big-ticket free agents like Tyler Linderbaum, Kwity Paye, Quay Walker, Nakobe Dean, and Jalen Naylor. Then Baltimore backs out of the trade because Crosby failed their physical. So, Adam, what's the likely timeline for the Raiders' options with Crosby now?
Well, Laura, first and foremost, I think he's got to heal from this knee injury that he had surgery on 8 weeks ago. After he had surgery from Dr. Neil Elatrash, he was on crutches for 7 weeks. He got off the crutches 1 week ago, and they believe he's on schedule to be ready for the start of the season, and they're hoping he's ready for training camp. But that gives you an idea of how much work needs to be done in the healing process. I think he's going to need to be healthy before he goes and passes a physical, though obviously if a team wanted him, they certainly could pass him on that particular physical. But the Raiders been adamant that they're not just going to give him away, have to get their price. Got their price from Baltimore, don't have it anymore. We'll see if somebody else can step up and get that done.
Yeah, Dan mentioned earlier he thought the Raiders should say, let's just do whatever deal comes our way. And Jeremy, you reported that there were some teams that were interested in Crosby earlier today. Some of those teams also were interested in Trey Hendrickson, and they missed out. The Colts, Bills, Bucks, Commanders, and Eagles were all involved in the Trey Hendrickson free agency situation. They don't end up getting him. So now are those teams potential partners with the Raiders to get Maxx Crosby? Would they be comfortable with whatever the physical situation is to add a player like Crosby to their roster.
Yeah, Laura, all those teams are looking for an upgraded pass rusher, looking for premier options. They were in on Hendrickson. Now they will pivot. You look at the Eagles. They had kicked the tires on Jonathan Grenard, a pass rusher with the Minnesota Vikings, who could potentially be traded. There were some other teams involved there as well. Certainly they'll try with Crosby, make that phone call to GM John Spytek, trying to buy low right now. So that will be the plan. But yeah, several of those teams are still looking. You have some secondary options on the market, like Joey Bosa, some players like that, if you need some instant pass rush on like a one-year deal. But a guy like that still would be the premier player if they could get him.
Philadelphia would be my #1 team. Philadelphia, Howie Roseman, their general manager, they are notorious buying low, or when the market's low. Landon Dickerson drafted coming off the ACL. They got Saquon when he was low, drafted Jalen Carter after he fell in the draft. Just feels like it's got that rain all over it. I think Buffalo should be in the conversation, the Rams, and Chicago as well. At some point, one of these general managers is going to make that call and say, the juice is worth the squeeze.
Man, the Eagles do this, and they get incredible production out of
Vintage,
Maxx Crosby. It feels like very Howie Roseman. Here's what the Eagles have done. They've been a little quiet by their standards this offseason. They did sign corner Reek Woolen to a one-year deal, brought back a backup tight end, Johnny Munt, and retained Grant Calcaterra. They let Jalen Phillips, Nakobe Dean, and Reed Blankenship walk in free agency. Those three players got $120 million in guarantees. And the other unanswered question this week has been A.J. Brown. Feels like that market's cooled a little bit just based off of what the Eagles would ask for him. But where are we with his situation?
Well, it's similar to the one that the Raiders were in with Maxx Crosby, that they didn't want to deal the player unless they got the price they asked for. And in the end, they did from Baltimore until they didn't. Well, the Eagles are in a similar spot with A.J. Brown. They would rather not move him, even though he would like to be moved. And they're not going to move him until they get what they feel is a fair price. They don't have that yet. Yes, they've had conversations. Yes, the Patriots have checked in. We'll see if something can happen. The Patriots obviously yesterday went out and signed Romeo Doubs from the Green Bay Packers. But that doesn't necessarily eliminate New England. Right now it's quieter. We'll see if anything picks up and gains steam anytime soon.
Adam, you said something there that made Dan and I both look at each other. You said that A.J. Brown would like to be moved. I'm not sure we've heard that said as much as maybe we've thought it, right? So that's interesting. A.J. Brown, Lewis, wants to be on the move, as you might imagine he would be. As you look at who should try to get him and what the Eagles could get for him, what comes to mind?
Yeah, those are two very important questions, right? I mean, like, what could the Eagles get for him? What would they accept for him? Now, where would he fit? Where would I like to see him go at this point? Look, I'm always trying to connect the dots, right? I'm always trying to put players with coaches who have gotten a lot out of them and who they've hit it off with. Who did A.J. Brown win a Super Bowl with just recently? Who was the play caller? It was Kellen Moore, right? Kellen Moore then goes ahead and gets the job in New Orleans. He takes Tyler Shuck. Tyler Shuck, has Chris Olave and not a whole lot else, and he almost wins the Rookie of the Year. You think A.J. Brown wouldn't look good down there in New Orleans with Tyler Shuck? And as they continue to build out that football, the question, though, down there is, look, they are really starting to build something nice down there in New Orleans. Do they want to give up a lot of draft assets in order to get, a wide receiver who's on the back nine of his career, so to speak? I'm not saying A.J. Brown's going to fall off a cliff anytime soon, but do they want to give up draft assets to get him? Now, if the price match what they think his future performance projection is, it just makes sense. Kellen Moore would know how to use him, and with the way Tyler Shuck looked as a rookie, he would welcome this with open arms, because now you have got, can you imagine A.J. Brown and Chris Olave?
Woo.
And then, who knows? They get Jeremiah Love, too, in the draft.
Oh.
The Saints all of a sudden are making noise.
Winnable division.
Kind of like that. 1, New England. 2, Baltimore. 3, the Chargers. New England, even though they've signed Romeo Doubs, who I think is a great addition, just the connection to Vrabel, and the still need to really upgrade the pass-catching options. Baltimore, you were willing to give up on those 2 first-round picks for Maxx Crosby. What happens if you can get A.J. Brown and Trey Hendrickson for only 1 first-round pick? Let's say you send one of those to Philly. I think the Chargers are a sneaky team to add Mike McDaniel, new offensive coordinator, perimeter players. We'll see if it happens before the June salary cap impact, but those would be the 3 teams.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. Oh, go
super
ahead.
Sneaky one, Cleveland Browns. They got 2 first-round picks.
Ooh.
Andrew Berry used to work for Philly. They could work something out. And I don't think they're going to be terrible next year. Not good.
Cleveland should not do that. Save your first-round picks. Continue to build your football team. Get a quarterback in 27.
Browns fans are like,
AJ Brown's not going to want to do that.
let us have something
That's
nice.
the problem. Yeah.
Well, it's had the most space, followed by the Ravens, Chargers, and Raiders. Still interesting the Raiders have that. Let's take a look at some of the best names available. Dan, give us a few value players still out there. Jeremy can give us what he's hearing on them.
Yeah, so I'm going to start at 5. I'm going to take pass rusher Bradley Chubb. Okay. Bradley Chubb had almost 9 sacks last year, and really the last 2 healthy seasons he's had, 25 and 23, he's almost got 20 total sacks. I think as a pass rusher, he's got to be an option.
I like him in Dallas. They got Rashawn Gary the other day. They need one more rusher. He's going to have a market here soon.
All right, I like that. I'm going to go number 4, Stephon Diggs. Coming off the ACL in 24 last year for New England, 80-plus catches, 1,000 yards. Still an impactful wide receiver.
You know what team has spent a ton of money recently but still needs wide receivers? Washington. The
I like
Commanders
that.
need help, either Juwan Jennings or Diggs there.
All right, number 3, I'm going Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
I'm honestly surprised that Kirk hasn't been signed yet. I know it's an expensive contract that he had in Atlanta. I thought when he played last year, he played good football.
Yeah, talking to teams, Dan, they just feel like he's not very hot right now. Hot name, not much of a market. However, he will be somewhere.
Players.
I like Vegas for him potentially as a bridge guy for Mendoza.
I also like that. I'm going to go to Juwan Jennings. There's something about Jennings' game that I like. He's just one of those dog type of receivers, outstanding blocking and just constantly reliable on third down.
He's the next big money receiver to go. Pretty much the only one left. Washington has been in on him. It could happen.
I would love that. And then number 1 for me is clearly Kyler Murray.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray did not have a great 2025 season. I remember the first half of the 24 season, he was a top 7 quarterback and an MVP style quarterback. It didn't finish great, but he's still one of the more talented guys at that position in the NFL.
Yeah, Jonathan Gannon's record in Arizona without Kyler Murray was like 2-19 or something crazy. With Kyler Murray, it was a lot better. He's still a difference maker, which is why you, sir, will probably be a Minnesota Viking in purple.
Yeah, Minnesota Vikings starting quarterback. Debo's still going to find a home. Yep. Dallas Goedert in the red zone, really good. Decker is going to be a serviceable left tackle. Joey Bosa had some moments last year for Buffalo. But interesting, Dallas. I would think that would be a sneaky, interesting move.
Yeah, for sure. And we talked about those pass rusher teams that were in on Trey Hendrickson. They're going to need one. Maybe the Bills bring back Joey Bosa, but they're in the market. You have the Bucs still try to get a guy. So he's going to have a home. But Dallas just, they were the worst defense in the league last year. They have to do more.
And you said likely Washington, or the team that seems most interested, Washington?
So Washington's been combing that higher-end receiver market. They were in on Romeo Doubs. It was between Washington and New England. That fell through. Juwan Jennings still wants a hefty contract, but he is a difference maker, so I still think the Commanders could circle back there.
All right, we've got a lot more free agents still to talk about, and still going to talk about some that have already happened. You don't want to miss what Dan has to say about a top wide receiver and his new team. If you're looking at the screen, we gave it away. It's Mike Evans. We'll tell you more right after this.